not only through these challenging COVID-19 times, but all the time. So please ask us any questions you have as we go along, and I'll do my best to answer those. Outside of this, you can contact me or my fantastic team anytime via Facebook, email, phone, website, LinkedIn, you name it. The details will be provided to you in just a moment in the comments. So for those who've been tuning in over the course of COVID to this point in time, you'll know that over a period of about 19 weeks, we were live pretty much every weekday morning at 9:15 up here on Facebook with updates for business owners and operators on dealing with COVID-19 and its impacts, obviously, on business owners, their managers, staff, local communities, etc. The pandemic isn't over, and the events of the past week are a salient reminder of that, that this is not going to be over for quite some time. But as we learn to live with the crisis, we're starting to find new normals. We've been on this journey with you. So we ourselves have been coping with getting to grips with JobKeeper, transitioning to work from home, managing health and safety obligations, consulting with our staff regularly, and trying to keep all our balls in the air just like everybody else. It's been a privilege to be able to be with you during this time to help you and your business survive and hopefully thrive in what has been pretty unbelievably challenging and continues to be unbelievably challenging times. And for those of us in rural and regional Australia, the triple whammy, I think, of drought, bushfires and COVID has really hit regional and remote Australia hard, but with this kind of strength and resilience that we're constantly seeing every day, we will come through the other side. We just have to be there advising and supporting each other in the meantime. So this weekly update that we've now moved to is designed to give you a weekly update on COVID, where we're at, some advice for businesses as to what the impacts are for you and for all of us as small to medium-sized businesses. So I'm going to overview sort of big changes or breaking news since last Monday, the 6th of July. And the first thing I want to remind you about, because hello, all of us can do with some assistance right now, is that from the 1st of July, small businesses and not-for-profits can apply for the Small Business Recovery Grant. That's a New South Wales Government grant. It's been available since the 1st of July. The grant is intended to assist businesses as they reopen from the restrictions imposed as a result of COVID-19. The grant is for safely reopening or upscaling operations. And the kinds of expenses that you could use that grant for include marketing, communications and advertising, staff training, business advice, so the kind of services that we can assist you with in terms of HR, your accountant, for example, and others, business continuity, additional cleaning services and equipment or fit out costs associated with social distancing and digital solutions. So it's a pretty wide range of things that you can utilise the grant for. You have to have incurred those eligible expenses, though, only from the 1st of July, and the grant applies where no other support is available. Applications close next month on the 16th of August, so please get up and have a look at that and see if that's something that that would be appropriate and available for your business. So you need to be a small business as at the 1st of March this year. You need to have an ABN and an annual turnover of more than $75,000. You need to employ less than 20 full-time equivalent staff. You need to be in a highly impacted industry. And the link we're going to give you, there's an attachment A in that can identify for you if you're in the highly impacted industries. You need to be able to report a payroll below the current New South Wales payroll tax threshold, which is $900,000. And you need to have experienced a decline in turnover of at least 30% from March 2020 to July 2020 to the equivalent period of at least 2 weeks in 2019. And you're required to declare your costs associated with reopening or upscaling. So we'll give you a link to that. I would encourage you to go up and have a look. It's really important to see what, and you might be surprised at what you're eligible for. Okay, so on to the more pressing elements to do with COVID that are impacting all businesses. So what we know as at late yesterday, and I've been looking this morning, we don't have an update this morning yet, but I'm sure that we will do shortly, is that more than 1,000 pub goers in New South Wales in the southwest of Sydney have been asked to self-isolate and get tested after another 4 people who attended the Crossroads Hotel in Casula tested positive for the virus on Sunday. That brings the total who tested positive from that location to 9. A gym a kilometre for the pub has also been closed after a member who worked at that venue has also tested positive. The New South Wales Premier has said that this level of community transmission has obviously put New South Wales now on high alert, and we're back at the crossroads in terms of fighting against the pandemic. And the next few weeks will obviously be quite critical in terms of preventing the cluster spread beyond the southwest Sydney hotspot. So while those of us in regional areas are somewhat removed, we have seen what's happened to Victoria, and we know that most metropolitan areas of Melbourne are now in 6-week lockdown, and there's allied regional areas that have also been impacted, particularly border areas, but others also, and we know how quickly this can impact regional and remote and rural areas in other states. So it really is a tricky time at the moment, and what happens this week is going to be, or how things develop in the next sort of week is going to be very sort of impactful in terms of those of us in business. So we've obviously literally only got the next few weeks to continue on the kind of strict path that we've been on. Otherwise, New South Wales is going to end up down the path of Victoria. So there's been a number of fines and instances of people flouting social distancing rules in New South Wales in the last 24 hours. So, and we've been warned by the New South Wales Premier not to be surprised if the government takes decisions to further reduce the risk in the next month, in particular of community transmission, and to do so to try and get ahead of it and prevent it getting out of control. What we also know from those who've been potentially exposed to this cluster in southwest Sydney is that the medical advice is that even people who've had a negative test shouldn't consider themselves to be out of the woods and must continue to isolate for the full 14 days. It's interesting that while the hotel in question, the Casula hotel in question, had a COVID-safe plan, investigations are underway as to whether or not it actually complied with the social distancing regulations on the 3rd of July, which is when that outbreak was said to have started. And look, this cluster at the hotel is a reminder for all of us in business that even when we have a plan, which we should have, and I'm going to talk about that further, it really is important to have vigilance in implementation. The New South Wales Government is encouraging all of us as businesses to use digital contact tracing methods, but patrons, customers, etc., can also use pen and paper if infection control risks, including hand sanitisers, are in place at businesses. So important to know. Look, the reality is that what's happening in Melbourne and the lockdowns that have had to be reintroduced there, and the risks to New South Wales and, of course, to other states are present and significant. And what we are already knowing, what we're already getting from businesses in Victoria is that for many businesses, this shutdown is even a far worse blow than the initial lockdowns. There was hopes, obviously, and certainly the Prime Minister and all of our state leaders conveyed this numerous times, that we would have a steady path back towards something resembling a normal turnover. And unfortunately, that has, with what's happened in Victoria, been replaced by fears that we're in for exactly the kind of stop-start scenario that the Prime Minister said, he didn't want to see, and we just couldn't allow. What we're expecting to get, as I foreshadowed in other updates, is an economic statement by the Treasurer on the 23rd of July, and that's when we're expecting to see details of further federal help beyond JobKeeper and JobSeeker, which are in place till September. Exactly how this next wave of government support for business will be structured isn't yet clear. Obviously, we would expect to see, provisions that go beyond one state or indeed just a few industry sectors, given the widespread damage that's still being inflicted on society, businesses, economy, etc. So what we're likely to see is another economy-wide measure to help those most needing it. Most likely it's thought at a lower rate than the $1,500 a fortnight JobKeeper level and tapering down over time. But what we're seeing in terms of the new community transmission phase of COVID, stemming of course as it is from Victoria, complicates what are pretty difficult decisions at all government levels in this instance. So the next wave of support is going to have to be enough to keep businesses and workers afloat in a time arguably that's becoming a little, even more anxious perhaps than it was back in March. And obviously any further collapse in confidence will only prolong the downturn. So at the same time, it's been made very clear by the government that they don't want to necessarily or hold back a necessary transition in the economy by spending too much on propping up what they're calling zombie businesses that have no realistic chance of survival beyond JobKeeper. So my advice this morning in terms of this morning's update, and I'm not at all one for fear-mongering, but I also am a pragmatist. And the 19 weeks that we were up here doing this live every day to keep everybody updated, the reality of the situation is that the kinds of record, outbreaks that we're seeing in Victoria and we've started to see in New South Wales mean that we could end up back in a more restrictive situation for businesses and for citizens. And that is something that we need to be prepared for. So my advice today for business owners in anticipation of those sorts of things is first and foremost to have your COVID safe plan in place. We will put up the links again to the New South Wales government site for that. As we've heard with the cases that have been profiled in Victoria and in New South Wales, it's incredibly important for you as part of that to get the details of your clients and customers so that you're able to trace that information and make contact as and when you might need to. It's incredibly important at this point in time to be reviewing your how your business is going and your staff arrangements. So contracts, position descriptions, policies, all of those. If you're on JobKeeper, looking at what enabling directions you've got in place, what you might have access to, the options you've got for requiring staff to go on leave, those sorts of things. It's now time to well and truly go back to those and be prepared for a situation of further restriction that could impact your business. It's also incredibly important throughout this time because obviously the media on this is not just giving pause for thought at the very least to those of us who are business owners and managers, but you can imagine it's also potentially making your staff anxious as well. It's incredibly important to be communicating with them, even if you don't know at this point what the impact is going to be. It's incredibly important to keep communicating with your staff and keep involving them in those conversations. And I would, because it's timely, invite everybody and strongly encourage everybody to tune into our webinar this Thursday at 5:30. We've started a weekly webinar series. We've moved to weekly COVID updates on a Monday morning at 9:15, this is our third week of doing that. And it's also our third week of our new webinar series on Thursdays at 5:30. And I will actually be hosting that webinar and talking in answer to the question, are you worried we're headed for lockdown again? All the HR must knows. So I'm actually going to be unpacking that again or not again, but unpacking those things on Thursday. Because there's a lot of businesses that we're hearing from now, particularly in the last 48 hours, who are really worried that we're going to head into another period of lockdown and what that means for their business. So I want to talk about that and address that question. And talk about all the HR must-knows that you need to have on Thursday afternoon at 5:30. So please join us for that webinar then. In the meantime, make sure that you've got your COVID safe plan in place. Make sure you're reviewing your staff arrangements right now, communicating with your staff, and tune into this Thursday's webinar. Of course, you can contact us anytime for a no obligation free conversation about what's happening for your business and where you're at and what you need. Thank you so much for joining us again today. If you have any specific questions, as I said, about your business, or you need or want us to help you out, contact us anytime. You can pop any information up here in the chat screen. You can contact us privately by direct message, phone, email, voicemail, Facebook, all the other platforms we're available on, so don't hesitate to reach out. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday evening this week for the third of our webinar series. We're doing a deep dive into a particular HR topic each week. Last Thursday, you got the benefit of our wonderful consultant psychologist, who will be Jessica, who will be appearing every month. So that all of our live streams and our webinars are available up on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our website. After each webinar and live stream is conducted. So this Thursday, as I said, I'll be talking about the question, are you worried that we're heading into lockdown again? That's a very realistic concern for business owners to have, and within the next week we will know more about whether we are headed in that direction. But it's important for you to know everything you need to know about the HR things you need to have in place in anticipation of that, or indeed if that happens. So you don't want to miss it. Please invite your colleagues, your family and your friends to that at 5:30 on Thursday. In the meantime, please hug the people that you can, wave cheerily at those that you're yet not allowed to, and stay safe, stay socially distant, wash those hands, please, and we'll really look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thank you so much.